Well,
And
yeah.
I've only heard one human in politics recently talk about wealth inequality, JD Vance. He's the only
Right.
one who I think, as far as I know, it's on his radar. And like, why wouldn't you hang that on your wall in the White House? That's the economy that people are demanding.
So what you had a name for your was sort of an open call, just send me your opinions. What did you call it?
Well, they started sending me their opinions first. And
Oh, okay.
it's like, yeah, like a couple days ago, I was like, oh, we got a whole lot of Gen Z comments. And I was like, you know what? I see you guys. So I sent them a SpongeBob meme and everybody liked that. So I sent them some Tide Pods too. And then they just started, writing to me. So I'm like, you know what? Last night I was, I was just a little bit shell shocked. So I sat down and, spent a couple hours doing this. I had myself natty daddy and was up till 2:30. And, put out a whole bunch of them. I got more. So I guess I'll do it tonight. I don't want to make it like a thing. I guess there's diminishing returns here, but like people are frustrated because they have nowhere to go. And it's like, well, normally what should happen is like, okay, well, this is the Republican Party and you voted for a Republican and you have Republicans all around you. So go to your local Republican chapter, become a precinct committee man, blah, 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 blah. We know all this. So the problem is that my efforts to interact with those people and the things that I've heard from the MAGA grassroots folks that also deal with those people all day long is that, yeah, there are a few good ones, but in general, the entire establishment Republican Party is basically just a major donor harvesting operation, and that a lot of candidates don't even care if they win or not because they get, like donor money and matching funds, and the consultants get rich, and then you can cut some deals behind the scenes, and then this is just what it seems like. And I look at, like, for instance, New Jersey again, and it's like, okay, you did it. You had people volunteer. You had grassroots people. I 100% agree with that. But did the National Republican Party really get that involved? And did Jack do everything he really could have? Like the polling said that he probably should have gotten Trump out for a rally. Why didn't Trump come? Those kind of things. And it's like, okay, he's run 3 times now and he didn't really have a platform at all. Like, it was easy to look at the 2024 election and say, 2 million people turned out for Trump. That's unlike anything that New Jersey's ever seen. How did he get those 700,000 people? Who were they? And how do we get them to come back out? And I don't think my feeling, not knowing what happened inside the campaign, is that they didn't really do that. And Mikey Sherrill got 90% of Harris's vote, and Jack Chiarelli got 70% of Trump's vote. And so I think this is a nationwide reality for the Republican Party. I think the exit polling doesn't really show these independents that will give Republicans a chance because Trump's on the ballot, and they're not going to turn out for other Republicans, and the Republican Party isn't incentivized to go after those people because they don't want that big tent. And frankly, I've heard a lot of horror stories about the amount of money that just gets lit on fire to recycle itself back into this big consulting Ouroboros of, it's like, hey, our candidates raise money, like the RNC raises money, the money comes down, they pick the vendor might do direct mailing in an area that's not really effective, but we need to spend the money anyways. Like, that kind of stuff happens. And then also the MAGA candidates just get brutally shut out of the system. Anybody that whistleblows gets redistricted out. It's really designed to keep the status quo out. And the status quo is to keep the status quo in. And the challenge to the status quo is just any platform that will do something. And that's the problem. The Republican Party exists to keep things from happening.
Right. And that's not what we need right now. What we need are very intense things. We need a lot of stuff happening in our favor and to our ends. And I love this because you actually, it's people, they're sort of anonymized. You post their messages and they might describe themselves, but you don't know who they are. And it's just so much more information than you get with a yes or no question. How do you rate, or how do you rank these? You don't get a ton of information there, but with these, you get the thought process and why people are thinking this. So I want to read this one that I thought was another sort of typical one, if not maybe a little bit more verbose than others, because apparently he was a law student. But he says, Zoomer here, 25-year-old that abandoned a constitutional law degree once I realized that only one side cares about the Constitution and loses repeatedly as a result. We voted for a dictator. Processes be spent too long watching and waiting and eating the Reagan slop that principles would save us, or that we'd feel good as the boot came down on our necks because we never forsook what really mattered. The position of decline is insurmountable. I will never own a home or be financially able to start a family. At the rate things are going, myself and many of my similarly aged countrymen who share my political persuasion will end up in prison by the time we hit 2028, assuming Dems regain power. None of us wanted to be this. But Trump needs to know that now, more than ever, is the green light to act with impunity, to ignore the courts, to put that same level of pressure and scrutiny on every single weak, limp-wristed rhino that's sitting on their fat ass collecting a paycheck while my birthright as an American is siphoned to support a worthless, feckless old guard. I mean, brutal but accurate. I feel that way myself personally, and I'm 10 years older than this guy, so I can't imagine the world he grew up in. It must have been so much worse than mine. So again, that sounded very typical to me of a lot of the responses that you got. It's not that people don't care about the Constitution. It's that at this point, it serves as a barrier to success. And the other side does not give a damn about it. So why do we? Right. I get that sentiment a lot.
Yeah, they're missing something that they very much, in my opinion, expected to see and didn't know what it was. Unless the absolute shattering of innocence. This is like a 24, 25-year-old guy, loves the country, was going to go to law school for years to devote himself to the Constitution that he revered. Now he just wants a dictator, and it was all done by the Republican Party. That's where we're at. And it's like this guy was a Trump supporter and probably still would be a Trump supporter if Trump would give them the agenda what they wanted. But what I think this last election was a referendum on wasn't like the Democrat Party. It wasn't Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris actually convinced almost half the country to vote for her. And a lot of it's because of the Yankees versus Mets effect, you know, and a lot of the lying in the mainstream media. Like, we know why this happens. You're InfoWars, you know the InfoWars, right?
Oh, yes.
But even despite that, even despite the fact that the Democrat Party reveres the government, only 30% of people said they trusted the federal government. So I think this was a referendum on institutional trust because, you know, a lot of people did support the Democrats, but in the back of their mind, they didn't like the COVID authoritarianism. They didn't like weaponization of justice. We were getting numbers like 65, 70% who thought that this was like banana republic stuff. They don't like the idea of like corrupted mainstream media or the FBI knocking down the door at Mar-a-Lago. And I think that's how you get to a mistrust of the government. And obviously, some Democrats didn't like the idea of Republicans running the government either. But we got to a situation where 53% thought the FBI was Joe Biden's personal Gestapo. 64% think the CIA is feeding talking points to the mainstream media. Just like ridiculous levels of 66% said that cheating was affected the 2020 outcome.
Oh, wow.
So what I think, it got it really high. Like people,
that's 60% of all respondents, not just Republicans?
66% of all U.S. likely voters said that they think the 2020 election was affected, outcome was affected by cheating. Wow. Now, some of them are Democrats who thought that Republicans won some states they shouldn't have, and Trump should have done way, like obviously. But that number, what's weird is that number started at 48% and it got up all the way to 66% over a 2-year period of utter ironclad gaslighting, like the ubiquitous front of there is no evidence, don't believe your lying eyes, and the number just kept going up anyways. Wow. So they've really kind of lost their ability to do these sustained gaslighting operations. Mass formation with COVID aside, I don't know how they'll be able to use that again. But so Trump gets into office and they see, the first thing they see is like, wow, Doge is effective. Right. And it's way worse than we thought. And there's dead people in Social Security, and there might not be gold in Fort Knox, and we're going to audit the Fed. And there's a ton of black ops buried in the DOD budget. Like, America got put through that psychological arc and then completely rug pulled, right? And then what we didn't see is like, okay, Trump got his people in. And so we're looking at the FBI. And Kash Patel said he's going to burn it down and turn it into a museum for the deep state. He said that, right? He said that we're going to move cities, we're going to fire all these people. Nothing. Right. You can't go from the FBI as Joe Biden's personal Gestapo and just change the head and expect America to all of a sudden trust the FBI. There has been no restoration of trust. There's been no reform. People still, like 41% of people still think the CIA killed Kennedy. Right. And it's like, okay, it was 70 years ago, but people still think a federal agency killed the president. Like, don't we have to like hug that out? And you see it across the board. Like, we were talking about how IRS got weaponized against Americans. Americans haven't been given a root cause and corrective action there. They haven't gone through. So none of this, not a single thing, not on Epstein, not on the election, not on like not pharma. 56% of voters think that the vaccine is killing a significant number of Americans. Wow. And now we have RFK in place. You haven't heard anything. Meanwhile, Pfizer's raking in record profits. You know why? it's probably safe to assume there's still regulatory capture, because if they were going to do something, we probably would have heard about it. So again, that's why I think Epstein was such a huge thing. Everybody called me a panic-in. I lost like 3,000 followers.
Right.
But it's like, well, no, this is the first most obvious way that Trump is telling you there's going to be no accountability.
Right.
And I hope there is. I hear behind the scenes there might be some election integrity stuff. I don't know. But like 16% of America agreed with Pam Bondi that the case was closed.
Wow.
And I sent that in and they saw it. And then Trump the next day is like attacking his followers. So you can't brute force public opinion. You can't. And they're trying to. Don't understand how they don't know this. It was a really big deal for 10 years. 10 years, the right thought that Bill Clinton was down there doing stuff. And then it's like, oh, nothing to see here. Oh, no, and cash comes out in front of Congress. And it's like, okay, they probably have like non-prosecution agreements or something like that. I don't know. You have an FBI. It's $11 billion a year. Are you going to use it? Oh, there's no evidence. Well, we still know who the people were. You could interview them. I'm old enough to remember what like a Form 302 is. You know what I mean? Like so it just doesn't add up. And those are my personal questions, but other people had questions. And then I said that this is not going to go away. You gave the Democrats a gift. And it's like every week you go on Reddit and you see like a whole bunch of new Epstein posts. And again, it'll be the very first thing that Democrats do when they get control of Congress. In the 120th Congress, Adam Schiff's going to run an Epstein commission. And it's going to be like, a whole bunch of fake evidence probably. It's going to be a complete show trial. Rachel Maddow is going to come back on MSNBC, and MSNBC is going to be a thing again to like go over. I just can't. Like, I'm so tired of this. It's like,
yeah, it's like exhausting. It's like, what do we have to do? And this is kind of the thing. Yesterday I was covering comedian Bill Burr. He's getting a lot of crap because he went to Saudi Arabia and did this thing for Riyadh, and all of his fans are. And he had this response that I was relating to other stuff because he's going, all these people online, they're being tricked into hating me, basically. He's going, the people who run the social media, their algorithms are making people hate me. And I was relating it to like what the pro-Zionist right is doing, where they're going, the approval rating for Israel is going down. It must be the Nazis. Let's silence everybody.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're trying not to do that. We're not blaming the other side. This is our failure. The Republican Party is failing right now, and we don't have anybody to blame but ourselves, or them, the people on Capitol Hill that aren't listening to us. But this is not a psyop that's making people hate Republicans. They have very valid and good reasons for distrusting the current Trump administration, and you're not going to fix that distrust by downplaying or disregarding the outrage that people are feeling.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And I think, I would propose a thought exercise to people. Like, again, let's forget about Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. It's like, I'm not a trained condemnation monkey. Like I said that I don't like the things that Nick said, but I don't need to say it on demand for you in order to make you feel better about me.
Right.
But let's forget that. And look at, I would submit to you Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Exhibit A, look at like the speeches of Randy Fine and Ted Cruz at the Republican Jewish Coalition.
Yep.
And then look at the way that J.D. Vance spoke at the Turning Point USA event he did. And in my opinion, he laid out a very graceful path towards a reasonable America First agenda that people could get behind. Like, he didn't talk about everything because he wasn't asked those questions, but he talked about a lot of like reasonable, intelligent stuff. Like, yes, America's interests should come first, but yes, we can also have allies. Yes, it's reasonable for you to care about your culture and want to live around people who share something in common with you. Yeah, like that's wild. Right. Can you imagine that? Like, yes, it's okay to be Christian and want to convert somebody. Like, that was wild too. Yeah. I think a lot of Republicans would not agree with those kind of statements, or at least not say them publicly, because it would upset folks and because of the cowardice. And so I thought that was very brave. He spoke off the cuff, presented Americans a very authentic. This is the part that the establishment Republicans don't get. Authenticity is the name of the game. That's your new political capital. They will spot you in a second if you flip-flop on something or lied, and you will get brutally ratioed. Yeah. And it's not as true on the left because they are very able to, like, apply unearned mental conformity, let's just say, right? But the right wants the truth. They want order and justice and the truth and a return to an America that was stolen from them, quite frankly. The Democrats flooded the border. Well, they had a little help. They flooded the border recently, and their network of NGOs like really fanned the flames of that. But the right mostly gave everybody these jobs to the rest of the world. Like that's what the right did. The right was global welfare. The left was like, that's what it is, right? Yeah, okay, there was NAFTA and stuff like that, but it's like one of the ones that was really fascinating that I read was this guy. And I remember you were talking about Ben Shapiro and how he said, well, you have to move to a different part of the country. And, all my family like grew up in the same spot. There was a guy very much like that. And he was really upset that he was the first generation of his family going back lots of generations that wasn't able to raise his kids in the same area because it was a blue state, insanely ridiculously high money. And, there's all kinds of things leading to that, right? We're taking like oligarch money and laundering it here, through the real estate. So all kinds of things that lead to that. And he was really upset. Like, my kids won't be around my family for the first time ever. And Ben Shapiro is like kind of okay with that, but it's not a good thing. Like, America is being changed by these forces and there is no recourse. The Republican Party is not going to talk about that. You know where that guy moved? Is he moved to a hollowed out ghost town that was created by the Republican Party that offshored these jobs. Let's acknowledge, in my opinion, I think the right has a very big role to play in woke. Because this idea of globalization that created this global homo value set came from people who were just trying to cut costs. They wanted to offshore things. They wanted it cheaper. They wanted a higher profit. And so there's this aspect of like unchecked and unfettered capitalism. And I'm a capitalist. I really am. But I think what a capitalist needs, a capitalist society needs, is a principled and independent, brutally effective government that's willing to block and tackle for the best interest of the society. And I think that includes paying attention to like wealth inequality measures. And I've only heard one human in politics recently talk about wealth inequality, JD Vance. He's the only one who I think, as far as I know, it's on his radar. And like, why wouldn't you hang that on your wall in the White House? That's the economy that people are demanding.
Yeah, well, and
you want Zoomers to be able to,
Well, it's just odd how JD Vance is like the one outlier on all of these, and he's dead on. He's the right one, but he's often the only one saying these things. And, when you look at in the past how empires fall or nations collapse, the one thing they always share is inequality. I mean, French Revolution, Spanish Revolution, the Spanish Revolution, ancient Rome, every single one of them, they've got a bunch of different things happening, but they all share inequality. So if you're concerned about America collapsing, wealth inequality is something you have to be concerned with. And again, the problem is the socialists are out there making arguments, showing care to the people that are struggling financially, even if they're scumbags, even if they're scam artists, even if their ideas will just make everybody poor. We all recognize that. But nobody's making the other argument, which is we have to have the American government. The reason the American government exists is to counteract forces that individuals cannot take on. I can't take on a corporation, but that's what my government is for. It's supposed to step in on my behalf and stop them. And that is pure Americana. That's Teddy Roosevelt, busting the trusts. There's nothing socialist about that, but it's almost like the fear of socialism has Republicans afraid to do anything that's positive with the government that will help the American people. How do we get over that fear that I think is really preventing a lot of good things happening?
Well, first off, the polling on antitrust is off the charts. Off the charts. And the administration knows it, and the administration has announced at least one case. I don't know the others, but I know that there are others potentially coming where they're going to go after, and I have to applaud it. Everybody on earth hates big tech. And I made a tweet today, like, why haven't we heard about big tech being socked in the nose? And I was told, well, keep an eye out on that. So I love that. It's like, but we could have telegraphed that. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that gives Google a chance to, or whatever. Like, I don't know, right? But that's an important one because it will be symbolic and it will have an impact. And, there's a whole lot more of that. And we'll see how it plays out. But like, this is the problem. And one of the measures I was looking at, I think that really shows how bad it's been hollowed out. And it comes back, in my opinion, to the financial crisis, is that you can go on FRED, the Federal Reserve Data Board, and set up total government per capita debt divided by median real income. So that ratio tells you, like, if you split all the debt up among Americans and then pick the average middle American, how much of their own portion of the debt would they be able to pay off? And that ratio was, for a long time, up until about 2005, 0.5%. And then all of a sudden, after the financial crisis, it skyrocketed. So there's something very specific happened there when the Republican and Democrat Party joined hands and gave us a major bipartisan crisis resolution bill and socialized banking losses. And this was on top of a burgeoning H-1B situation. And that number got up to 2.5. Wow. 2.5x, 5 times worse than it just was 20 years ago. So that's like a hopeless amount of debt for your average American to be able to pay off. And if you have your producers put that median home price chart, I think it's pretty astounding how that like really hockey sticks at the end in a way where it's like, if you look at it,
this might be a different one. This is the average home buyer age.
Yeah. So the one where it's like showing a median age of home buyers over time and also the first time home buyers, those numbers are hockey sticking up at the ends. There's something really different about the last 4 or 5 years, specifically in the housing market, which has such an impact. And also, I think you'd find the same kind of thing in healthcare, where costs are just spiraling to the point where it's like, it's unsustainable if it continues, and it's unsustainable if it doesn't. Right. And it's like, well, what side of the knife edge do we fall down on? I don't know. We're not going to be able to survive this much hollowing out of the younger generation, and the problem's only getting worse. One of the charts showed that not the first time home buyer, but the average home buyer, the median age in the last 20 years went from 39 to 59.
And that's 20 years. So it's 20 the same years, people. It's the same people.
The same people buying the houses.
Wow.
Yep. And so that trend's going to continue, which means that younger generations are going to increasingly be shut out. And, you know, the boomers are probably like lying about primary residence and they're getting their Airbnbs and they're trading their stocks and stuff like that. And meanwhile, you're going to have like the younger generations paying the taxes for those people to get multiple rounds of chemo in their super posh like retirement villages. It's really dark. Yeah. You probably know this. Are you a millennial or a Gen Z?
I'm a millennial. 35.
Yeah. Do you know what that meme they have, right, from 4chan?
Which one?
The day of the pillow.
Yes. The boomers.
That's the chart I'm talking about right there. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of resentment there, and I think it's well placed. And again, it's like, okay, there's all this debt. And then we look around and we go, well, what do we have for it? You know, we wage all these wars overseas. We spend all these hundreds of billions of dollars. What do we get for it? What is the return on that investment we're making? Because my life is significantly worse. And then it gets into just the idea that, like, if you do things the right way, you're an idiot. Everybody who's cutting corners, everybody who's a scumbag, thief, liar, criminal gets everything they want. If you keep your head down and study and get a good degree, you're an idiot because you're just going to go on the unemployment line like everybody else. So they're literally disincentivizing virtue.
100%. And this is very big in the healthcare industry. I know our time's limited, but I'll say, like, if we had capped Medicare and Medicaid at the percent of GDP it was in 1970, we would only have like less than 20 trillion in debt right now. And we spent a lot of money turning healthcare into the #1 employer in almost every state in America. And what did we get out of it? Like a couple of years of life extension. But it was really costly because it pretty much destroyed the republic. And that's one of the things that we could be fixing right now. Changing the way insurance bills, changing the regulatory environment, punching back at these people that have been captured by industry. And unfortunately, this is one of the most powerful industries. It pays for 25% of all news advertising, the pharmaceutical industry. So we got to get really busy fast.
Yes, something's got to happen, and it's got to be us to do it, because otherwise it's going to be them to do it. Like, a big change is coming. I would like it to be on our initiative, not theirs. And that's what, is really up for debate right now, is whether it's us or them. Mark Mitchell, thank you so much for being with us. Honest Pollster on X, RasmussenReports.com. So we got a big hill to climb here.